So today we're going to be exploring an Agent City, try not to be paranoid, and level up. Alright, let's get started. Um, so the person posting this is 42 and female, and she is talking about her husband, 42 male. My husband has informed me that he intends to go on a vacation with his brother-in-law, who is 35, and Ibiza. How should I handle this? Okay. Hi there. I really wish I didn't have to make this post, but here goes. So, me and my husband have been happily married for about 60 years, give or take. We both have stable careers, good family life, and are fairly fortunate despite the cost of living racking the UK right now. We have two boys, 15 and 10, and up until this Sunday, thought we had it pretty good. We argue sometimes, but of course, we've never gotten too bad, and we have a pretty decent sex life with some exploration, but I won't get into that. Long and short is, on Sunday, just after I dropped our boys off at his friend's, my husband asked me if he had the house alone, and more importantly, do I have a minute? I said yes, and he sat me down, then got on this printed poster for some sort of orgy and started explaining to me the concept of a vacation. Right off the bat, it just seems like it's a cruise for gay people. But let's keep on reading. Here, how it's where straight men go to somewhere with sun, sand, and booze and become gay for the duration of the trip. But that's fine because it doesn't really count. Because what happens on the vacation stays on the vacation. That's crazy. I was just completely silent and mortified. Even more so when he said he was looking into booking a trip to Ibiza next year with his brother-in-law, his sister's husband, to experience it for himself. Bro, what is going on in this family? When he finally let me speak, I just said, I need him to be clear with me. Is he gay? Because if yes, that's okay, but we need to figure out what happens going forward. I didn't let myself get angry or upset. I was just stunned. He swore up and down how he's not gay and he's 100% attracted to women, and of course still loves me and our bows. So I said, well, do you think you're bi maybe? And he got very defensive, saying how I need to drop the accusations and that this is the beauty of the vacation. It allows straight men to quote unquote experience gayness without actually being gay, and how it's like going to an aquarium. How does that make sense? Okay. And again, he was adamant he doesn't find men's bodies or genitalia exciting at all, but he needs, in quotes, to experience this apparently. I said, well, I'm really not comfortable because even if he was bi, this would be exactly cheating on me, and he got angry and reiterated he's not because that's the beauty of the vacation example. I just had enough and left the room. I ignored him for the rest of the day, but we spoke at tea where I again asked him, why does he want to do this so bad if he's not gay? He said how he's interested in how gay men's lives differ to straight men's, and that unfortunately, once the vacation begins, it's simply impossible for a man to resist, and he must surrender himself, mind, body, and soul to the vacation, or quotation marks, be destroyed. What is going on? Is this some sort of cult? If I was her, I would think someone hypnotized him, and he's part of a cult now. It seems. I really can't put into words how surreal it was because he was speaking so matter of factly, and he again insists this is a thing that straight men do all the time, and how he's actually doing it a bit late. Dude, he's talking about it like it's like spring break or something. I just said to him, if he has any love for me, then he can't go. He can go ahead with this, and if he does, the marriage will be dead. We didn't speak anymore after that. Since then, he's mentioned no more of it, but somehow And this what scares me a lot too. That decision genuinely seems to be tearing him up. He didn't go into work on Monday and only went a half day yesterday. Because he told them he just felt too ill and he just looks distraught every time I see him. I really don't think he's wholly gay, though I can absolutely believe he's bi, but I'd rather we talk about that in a healthy way rather than this incredibly weird denialism around going on a sex holiday to Ibiza. Has anyone known straight guys to do this and come back and just go back to being straight men? Like, surely that can't be a thing that happens. I'm so out of my depth here and I just don't know how to initiate the conversation. For the record, I also haven't mentioned it to his sister yet. I don't know how I'll even break it to her. Thanks for any help. I just don't even want to think about getting this or out there has happened even just a little bit. That is extremely wild. Let's see if there's an update, and there is. Okay, so this is a week afterwards. So when I last posted, I contracted my husband to tell him he wouldn't be staying at home tonight and a bag would be waiting for him. As you can imagine, we argued quite badly. I won't go into the specific details, but no, I'm 100% on board with the fact at a minimum he's bi. Might even be gay together. That's a big difference from what she said initially. We've had arguments in the past, but I genuinely never seen him give such a childish tantrum before, screaming about how I just don't understand the Caucasian and insinuating I'm actually homophobic because I refuse to allow him to participate in this culture exchange with the gay community. A lot of you said to ask him if it would be acceptable if the roles were in reverse, and I did say, would it be acceptable if I went and slept with other guys during that week? Like fucking clockwork, he was angry and offended, saying it's completely different because the Caucasian means nothing and what happens on the Caucasian stays on the Caucasian, so it doesn't actually count. Whereas I'll just be straight up cheating. Well, I turned it around on him. No, but you see what happens in Manchester stays in Manchester. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't count. It's like bird watching. And I think it got through to him. He went all quiet and then started crying, admitting the thought of me sleeping with other men is destroying his heart, but relationships need sacrifices. So he agreed, while in tears, that when he goes on the vacation, I'll get 1 week in Manchester to do whatever I want. He doesn't want me to, but that's fair in a twisted way, he supposed. I told him to get out of my house. Thankfully, he left without a fight. Okay, so he has to be gay at this point. Let's keep on reading. I know it's incredibly petty, but I also drained the joint bank account so he couldn't try to use it against me. About an hour later, I got rung up by his mom, who just screamed and screamed at me about being a cheating whore, how it was horrible, what about the kids, what is going on? When I finally got my composure back, I just asked her son about the Caucasian. Obviously at first she got angry, but I said, no, just ask him about the Caucasian. He'll explain, but she called me a joke and hung up. Later on, getting into the evening, got another phone call from her and floods of tears. She was very apologetic and I told her it doesn't need to be the one to apologize. She was just so upset she put FIL on the phone, who, while he sounded calm, I could just sort of tell he was on the warpath. Again, very apologetic and said he overheard that phrase. Asked my husband, and husband initially said no, it's nothing, before explaining how it's a modern thing men do, example, and gave them the same spiel about how what happens on the Caucasian, men cannot resist the Caucasian, how a man will surrender to the Caucasian, example. FIO just said, oh, father-in-law just said they told him to leave or they'll call the police. Don't care where he goes, but he wasn't staying there. Husband tried to call me while I was on the phone, but I just ignored it, and father-in-law just said he was so sorry for me and that they have my corner in this. So that's one thing. Okay, at least his parents are reliable people, trustworthy people so far. I was afraid they were going to go on his side on this. Told them to be there for their daughter because it sounded like brother-in-law is involved, and father-in-law just said he had to go out because he was so angry. I later got a text from my husband after the phone call, which was all weirdly ramble, saying about how I would abuse the occasion to destroy his marriage and destroy his life. And again, he said I was homophobic for doing such a thing. Told him we'd talk when he grows up and blocked his number. I took a day off work myself to have the locks changed this morning, so that's a 500 gone. But whatever, at least I know he won't be coming back. I'm going to look into how to proceed with a divorce and then we'll move out from there. Oh, of course, there's also the brother-in-law. So I haven't yet met with sister-in-law. She was in such a state and hasn't taken this far worse than I have reasons that would be clear soon. We're going to maybe try tomorrow, but we did talk over the phone, and I eavesdropped on the conversation with her husband, where she puts her phone on speaker and I went on mute. Her husband got home earlier and just said to him, "Can you please explain what a Caucasian is?" She told me afterwards she was praying he would look confused or just be what or anything like that. But instead, he just sat her down and explained that a Caucasian is a new thing where straight men go to gay hotspots and participate in gay sex acts, but it doesn't count because there's no investment, and because what happened to the Caucasian stays on the Caucasian. He said it's like writing down angry thoughts and putting them in a drawer. You never have to see them again. What is going on? I've never heard of that phrase either. And wouldn't your drawers just fill up? Whole time, sister-in-law is in tears as he just calmly bats off the same points my husband did about how it doesn't count, and he even did the whole "it's impossible to resist, you must surrender or be destroyed." I seriously think they must be speaking to a dominatrix or something, because surely neither of them are into this to actually make that up on their own. Yeah, I didn't think about that. They said the exact same thing. There has to be someone controlling them. I still think it's a cult. I really don't want to go into what was discussed for her sake, but it did become very apparent to me that the brother-in-law is into sissy, hypno, porn, and at times conflated that with the concept of a Caucasian. What is hypno even, bro? Okay, let's keep on going. There was this utterly surreal moment where sister-in-law is just trying to wrap her head around this, while also in floods of tears, and he explains so genuinely, so matter-of-factly that for most men, the Caucasian is either a one-time or annual thing, but some men go on to Caucasian for years, and others simply never return because they use hypnosis and mind control to be totally feminized into a state of permanent pseudo-gayness. She said, and disbelief, sorry, I was just in shock of what I just read. She said, in disbelief, surely if you're taking it up the arse wittingly because you want to, that makes you gay. And he said no, because that's the beauty of the Caucasian. You can do all this gay stuff, but you don't interact with the wider gay life experience. She asked him if the sissy stuff is what he wanted, and he said not on a long-term basis, and was adamant that this is something all straight men do, but she wouldn't get it because she's a woman. Alright, straight guys out there, is that true? I definitely think it's not, but I don't go outside much, so you guys let me know in the comments. Then there was more insinuations of homophobia. Well, that marriage is dead too, I suppose. The whole ordeal ended up when she said to him, he has a choice to make, and he said no. He doesn't need to make this choice because the beautification is that it allows him to keep his marriage, because it doesn't count. She said that's not the choice. The choice is whether he's leaving the house that night or she is. Only good thing he did was leave. Me and sister-in-law spoke about it afterwards, and I'm just still utterly stunned. I understand she's gone to her parents for the support. What exactly did we do to have our lives destroyed in such an abrupt, bizarre, embarrassing way? Per some advice, I'm going to look at devices and bank statements to see if I can find any definitive proof of cheating. After that, I suppose figure out how I told the boys why their father won't be coming home. Edit. Spoke to other sister-in-law and gave her a skimmed down version of it. She asked her husband and thankfully he was deeply confused, but then mentioned about 2 years ago at a birthday party, he was approached by my husband and brother-in-law about signing up to some online boot camp around BTSM cross-dressing. Alright, these guys were just freaks, bro. He assumed they were taking the piss out of him, so he told him fuck off and never really thought about it again. The fact that this has been going on for that long is making me want to throw up. Yeah, I thought it just happened recently, but they've been doing it for 2 years at the minimum. So I would say like 4 or 3 years. P.S. For the poster who said about the worst options, I'm actually going to look into adultery because plain and simple, that's what this is. Dang. That's super crazy. If I was her in that situation, I would think my life is ruined. You spend so much time with someone, out of a sudden they want to go to a vacation, not just by themselves but with a brother-in-law. Yeah, they, like I said and what I've been saying, they have to have been hypnotized or something. They had to have been bitten by maybe a gay spider, a gay snake, maybe the gay frogs people talk about, because there's no way this just happens out of a sudden. A guy, mid-20s, I quote-unquote work with, would hit on me. 18, female. I don't really know what to do. Okay? So a quick context. A guy who's 20 I work with has been hitting on me. I just turned 18. I really don't know what to do. Let's get started. I don't quite know if this is a subreddit I should be going to, but I kind of need a little advice from people who may have had similar experiences. I donate plasma once to twice a week, a technical form of self-employment. I started over a month ago, a little after I turned 18. One of the physicians that worked there talked very casually with me and asked me to follow him on Instagram. To be cordial, I did so with no intention of talking to him that much, if at all. We had a prior conversation about how I just freshly turned 18 and that he didn't even know about plasma donation until he was 22. I don't know his exact age, but I assume he's a bit older than that. Okay, it's a little weird, but okay so far. I had not heard from him on Instagram at all, and when I went in for my donation, he was not there. I went in this past Tuesday on my usual schedule and he was there. He asked how life has been since we last saw each other, and I told him how I recently bought plane tickets to visit my boyfriend, 18 male, in March. He asked a couple of questions about my relationship and that was it. He left shortly after he finished greeting me. The next day I received a message from him on Instagram replying to my story, not very relevant, and parentheses. We talked a bit about our cats since we both have our own. I had a very busy day and so I didn't respond much. I'm still in high school, that's how freshly 18 I am. I was working on school projects in the middle of the night and saw that I forgot to respond to an earlier message of his. I shot him with a response back and we talked a little about anime. He suddenly says, "It's a shame you're taken. Are you in an open relationship because of how long distance it is?" I told him no, yet he kept pushing. He eventually asked me to flat out cheat on my boyfriend, which I refused. He finally backed off, but it left me really upset. That's crazy. And now you're gonna have to see him at the donation place. All right. I taught him no so many times, yet he didn't respect the first few times. How am I supposed to trust him in any sense when at the donation center? I told my parents about it the next morning, and they're insistent we go in and tell the manager about his inappropriate behavior. I just don't know what exactly to tell the manager. I have the Instagram messages as evidence, but I'm not trying to get this guy fired. I'm super uncomfortable by his behavior, but I don't want to be around him, especially not in an environment as vulnerable as plasma donation. I have never experienced this with someone I'm connected to in person. I usually block and ignore online harassment, but I'm having a really hard time shaking this anxiety and discomfort off since I actually know this guy in real life. Does anyone have any suggestions about how I should go about taking to the manager at the donation center, or any advice for how to deal with the general situation? My advice so far is you would have to talk to the manager. It's not your fault. This guy's acting like a creep. If he loses his job, that's on him for acting the way he is. I fear if you don't tell anyone about it, he'll just do it to another girl, and the cycle keep on going. But it does feel bad that someone is going to be losing a job, but they put themselves in that situation. Don't beat yourself up too much about it. And this is an update about a month later. Let's see what happens. I took comments advice and had the evidence on standby for my meeting with the manager, and I also talked to a woman who works there about the whole situation first. She took me into an exam room and had me sit down to tell everything. She agreed with me about how absolutely inappropriate the situation was. She ran to get her manager and she stayed in there with me as I told the manager what was going on. The manager was also very appalled and told me that a discussion will be had with the guy immediately. He assured me that if I chose to continue donating with them, that they would accommodate me and have me be screened by someone else, and that he would come nowhere near me. I didn't even have to show them the messages. They just immediately believed me and handled it. The woman I originally talked to about it told me that she personally would do all the screenings so long as she was on shift. Hey, that's nice of her. I appreciated the sincerity they both had for the situation, and while I'm still debating on transferring to a different plasma donation facility, I'm very happy it got dealt with. The anxiety is for the most part off my shoulders. I'm going to take time to think on whether I should transfer facilities or not. Thank you for the people who gave me advice in the comments. I really appreciate the thoughtful and kind advice. Okay, nice. If I was in your situation, I would, well, depending on how far it is, if it's going to cost me a lot of gas, might as well stay. They did promise he is not going to have nothing to do with her, but there's still going to be that occasion, glance over, and having that feeling like you know that they know that you told the manager. But if it's not that far for a facility transfer, I say, hey, go for it. It's gonna be a lot easier for you to donate. But thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you guys on the next video. If you guys have any tips or advice, just let me know. Peace.